Welcome to the discussion. We're diving into the Nancy Guthrie case update, the one where the FBI now believes that the original ransom notes were absolutely real.
I'm really intrigued by that twist. So these original notes, they claim to threaten Nancy Guthrie's life, right?
Exactly, and it's a major pivot in the investigation because now the narrative shifts from a possible hoax to tangible evidence from what might actually be the kidnappers.
Wow, that's pretty intense. It makes you wonder how the authorities are reassessing the early evidence.
Absolutely, and what's more startling is how Ashley Banfield on Drop Dead Serious laid it out. On day 65 of the search for Savannah Guthrie's missing mother, new details popped up connecting the dots to these very real ransom notes.
Right, and it's interesting to note that these notes were originally sent to TMZ and Tucson media channels. It almost feels like the case has taken on a life of its own.
Yep. Yeah, it's like the investigation went from skepticism to maybe official credence. They're now calling them real rather than just sensational messages.
And considering how high profile this investigation is, that kind of shift completely changes the stakes, doesn't it?
It does, absolutely. With the FBI and even figures like Harvey Levin pointing out that these messages may actually be from the kidnappers, we're looking at a case that could redefine the narrative around Nancy Guthrie's disappearance.
Yeah, but is it possible that there's still a chance some of this could be misinterpreted? I mean, sometimes early notes and twists can be recontextualized later on.
That's a fair point, though right now the momentum seems to be behind the idea that they were genuine threats. It's like evidence is stacking up and the investigators are leaning into the possibility that the kidnappers really planned on, sending these messages.
Right? So, in essence, this isn't just a case about a missing person. It's become a sort of puzzle about the authenticity of these ransom notes and who stood behind them.
Exactly. It's a layered situation. On one level, the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, and on another, the implications of these notes. Think about it. If the notes are real, they open up new investigative avenues, maybe even a suspect profile that the FBI could build.
I see that dynamic unfolding. But just to challenge that a little, don't you think the revelation might also lead to a bit of a dead end if contradictions start surfacing in other evidence?
I agree. There's a potential for missteps here. For now, though, the focus is heavily on the ransom messages and ensuring they weren't fabrications invented for media impact. It's like investigators are rechecking everything from forensic analyses to eyewitness reports.
And then there's this whole element of new tech coming into play. I noticed a mention of cutting-edge technology potentially being used to revisit the crime scene. What's your take on that?
That part is really exciting. A renowned DNA expert suggested that investigators should go back to Nancy Guthrie's house with new technology. It's like using fresh eyes and tools to re-examine the case from a modern perspective.
Yep, right. It's like updating a classic crime scene with high-definition forensic techniques, which may finally fill in those gaps we've been puzzled about.
Precisely. And think about it. Combining that modern tech with this revelation about the ransom notes really layered the case with both historical ambiguity and current investigative drive.
It seems like every piece of new information forces the investigation in a new direction, doesn't it? Really adds heat to the whole narrative.
Right on. And it's also interesting how the media, particularly Drop Dead Serious with Ashley Banfield, plays a role here. They not only report the twist, but also put forward the possibility of the notes having been authored by the real criminals.
Yeah, that kind of journalistic push adds another layer. It primes both the public and the authorities to expect deeper interconnections.
Absolutely. And it definitely influences public opinion. The fact that these details are being broadcast so widely means that every update is scrutinized not just by the FBI, but by dedicated true crime enthusiasts.
And with such scrutiny comes intense debate. I mean, we have to consider the possibility that sometimes media hype might distort perceptions, right?
True, but in this case, the FBI's involvement gives it a certain level of credibility. It's not just sensationalism, it's an official take on the evidence at hand, even if early on we need to be cautious.
Right? There's that balance between being critically inquisitive and not dismissing important evidence too early.
Exactly. And also, notice how this story relates to a broader narrative about missing persons cases. There's this urgent push in investigations worldwide to reevaluate older evidence with new tech and renewed investigative vigor.
Yep. It's kind of a wake-up call. Never assume that older details are inconsequential because sometimes they resurface with explosive implications.
Totally. And the Nancy Guthrie case exemplifies that. It's also about the dynamic between traditional evidentiary methods and modern forensic science. I mean, think of it like revisiting an old mystery with today's magnifying glass.
And that in turn forces law enforcement to re-strategize. It might even affect ongoing searches and prompts new investigative directions.
Yes, indeed. And while the FBI is now leaning towards the guilt of those messages being authentic, it could also compel a re-examination of other parts of the case, like timeline discrepancies and witness accounts.
Exactly. Speaking of timelines, what do you think of the way the story has been unfolding? Does it resemble how other high-profile kidnappings have been handled?
That's a good question. It's reminiscent of cases where initial misdirection later gives way to a more nuanced view as new evidence emerges. It often happens in long-duration investigations. The early narrative gets reinterpreted in light of fresh insights.
Yep. It almost feels like a detective novel unfolding in real time. But at the same time, it's a stark reminder of the real lives behind the headlines.
Exactly. And that's why the stakes are so high here. The lost time in investigating these ransom notes might even have overshadowed other critical leads. It's a race against time, not just administratively, but emotionally for all involved.
Yeah. And then there's the broader piece, how these kinds of updates also resonate with the audience. People are naturally drawn to real mystery and the chance of uncovering truth in a seemingly convoluted case.
Exactly. Plus, the crossover with true crime merchandise and online communities like the Drop Dead Serious store just shows how intertwined media and investigation have become. It's an ecosystem of information and, say, cultural conversation.
Yeah, it underscores a sort of modern public fascination with solving mysteries, sometimes even aiding investigations by crowdsourcing tips or spreading awareness.
Right. And although that can be a double-edged sword when not with misinformation, sometimes muddying the waters, in this case, it seems to be prompting a deeper inquiry from professionals.
Yep. I guess the key takeaway here is that every new twist, like the potential authenticity of those ransom notes, adds critical pressure on investigators to piece together a coherent story, right?
Absolutely. And it highlights an ongoing challenge, balancing public interest and media momentum with rigorous, methodical investigation. It's an evolving case that continues to keep everyone on edge.
And as more technology is deployed and more experts weigh in, we might finally see some breakthroughs that could shift the understanding of this whole case once and for all.
Exactly. And that's what makes following this investigation so compelling. Each new piece of evidence could be the key that cracks the case.
Right. It's like every update is a turning point. And while there's always room for skepticism and debate, there's also hope that the truth, however complicated, will eventually come to light.
Absolutely. This case, with its twists and technological advances, really serves as a microcosm for modern investigative challenges. It's both a lesson and a sobering reminder of what's at stake when lives hang in the balance.
Couldn't agree more. Well, thanks for this deep dive. It's been enlightening to unpack all these layers. The authenticity of ransom notes, the interplay of media and crime, and the reassessment of evidence with new tech.
Definitely. It's a complex but fascinating case that reminds us of the importance of keeping our investigative minds open and thorough.
Yep. And it'll be interesting to see how future updates shape not only the case, but our overall approach to such investigations. Thanks for the lively discussion today.
My pleasure. It's always great to explore these high-stakes mysteries and how they evolve with every new detail. Until next time.